Hi, guys, and welcome back to The Voice Podcast. This is episode 3 of The Voice Podcast titled Systemic Racism in the Institutions. I'm your host, Jamila Washington.
And I'm your VP, Caitlin Fletcher.
And we have 2 special guests that we'd like to welcome today.
I'm Zell Burks.
Vincent Bird.
And both of these young men are criminal justice majors at the University of Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Today we would like to start off by addressing a couple of things. The first thing I would like to talk about is what exactly is systematic racism?
I feel like systemic racism is like a form of like discrimination or form of like racism that's like built towards like people of color, and that's also like built into a system of like probably like a school, an organization, even like a group of people also, yeah.
I've heard of what this is, but I feel like it's not talked enough about and not taught, especially today, like especially myself who won't experience something like this, and I'm privileged to recognize that, but I feel like it's not taught enough about where I can't even say exactly like how it affects individuals specifically.
Yeah, okay. And thank you for your honesty, because that's exactly what we're looking for when it comes to how to combat this problem.
Mm-hmm. What is systematic racism in institutions? Like, what does that specifically look like? Or could you possibly define what systematic racism in institutions is?
So, should I hold this?
Yeah.
Okay. Systematic racism in institutions. I personally would define that as basically institutions having either laws, rules in place that keep minority people down, not giving them the opportunities to compete at the same level as white people, or just straight up not allowing them to continue for reasons such as their culture or that's really it.
Institutional systematic racism is the system of structures that have procedures or processes that disadvantage racial minorities, particularly Black people. Do you guys have anything?
Should we say what it means to us, like what we think it means?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll go first. Systematic racism, right? Okay, I think systematic racism is okay, we can say that pertains to like the justice system, but that's part of systematic racism. I feel like it also happens in schools or like police systems, things like that.
And to really break this down, the root word of systemic is system, and it's basically like organized, unjust laws or structural institutions. And when we talk about institutions, I mean like how Caitlin said, schools or police systems or anything really of that nature. Really anything of that nature. I'm so sorry, my phone is ringing, guys. But when I say like anything as far as like schools and jail houses or banks or corporations, I really mean like when you have 2 different schools, an urban school and a suburban school, the whole structural institution is completely different for students of Black descent and students of white descent. In inner city schools, the schools are very ran down, the curriculum is weak, and the opportunities are very, very limited. Whereas in suburban schools, they have a plethora of opportunities to explore different career fields and have different level of challenges for their education and for that specific student.
I would say it's more of like a system I feel like was created back in colonial times, and it was more designed to keep Black people in check, not just Black people, but all people of color or people that are non-white. And I think the system kind of turned against itself, and I feel like it not only targeted Black men, but it targeted Black women, and then finally it started to target white women. So I feel like the only person who really took advantage from systematic racism is white men. but I feel like it was created by white men for white men, just to keep them in power.
How do you feel?
I mean, yeah, I agree. I mean that our country's history is built on racism. Like that's not under the shadows. That's very at the forefront of media today, and at the forefront of a lot of issues in certain institutions like the justice system.
A Minnesota postal worker died of a stroke in police custody after officers ignored his symptoms for hours. Here's what happened. The family of Kingsley Bimpong, a 50-year-old Minnesota postal worker who died of a stroke in police custody last year, has filed a wrongful death suit against 3 Eagan police officers, Dakota County, and 10 Dakota County correctional officers who allegedly ignored signs of medical distress in Bimpong for 5.5 hours, wrongfully assuming that he was intoxicated. Bimpong was arrested in November 2024 after he left work early due to a headache, then drove into oncoming traffic while driving home. Footage from the body camera of the officer who pulled him over showed that he was exhibiting serious physical and cognitive abnormalities, the lawsuit states. Bimpong was reportedly unable to give basic information to responding officers, including his own name, where he was coming from, where he was going, or where he lived. According to the lawsuit, officers at the scene called a drug recognition evaluator, who did not complete a routine 12-step evaluation to determine whether Bimpong was under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Responding officers noted that there were no smells or physical evidence that Bimpong had used drugs or alcohol. The lawsuit states that officers had multiple conversations throughout the day about whether he was suffering from a serious medical issue. Bimpong was placed under arrest and taken to the Eagan Police Department for a blood test, where he allegedly stumbled, remained confused, and at times nodded off to sleep. An emergency medical provider at the station reportedly asked officers if they were planning on taking Bimpong to a hospital, but officers responded, "It's a whole thing," and proceeded to transport him to the Dakota County Jail. While en route, one officer's body camera recorded him saying, "Is this dude having a stroke?" with the word stroke being cut off because the officer allegedly muted his camera. Despite needing assistance to walk into the jail, Bimpong's booking paperwork stated that he did not require further evaluation. Multiple officers observed Bimpong rolling around and struggling on the ground for several hours while in his cell, but still marked his status as okay, according to the lawsuit. After approximately 3.5 hours, a nurse entered his cell and discovered him cold to the touch and unresponsive. The nurse administered Narcan 3 times with no response. Bimpong was finally transported to a hospital where alcohol and drug screens came back negative, while a CT scan showed a hemorrhage and swelling in his brain. The lawsuit states that police and correctional officers acted on incorrect and unfounded assumptions about Kingsley as justification for treating a person suffering from classic stroke symptoms with callous indifference that resulted in his death. An investigation after the incident found that officers violated state law by failing to document any emergency medical information and refraining from conducting a required mental health screening. Bimpong's family is seeking $120 million in damages and policy changes at the Dakota County Jail.
So transitioning into this event that took place about a year ago with a young man, he had a stroke, and as we could see in that video, he was having a stroke, and before police even got involved, this man was already medically suffering. How do you guys feel as though, as police officers or as people who are here to protect us, they did their jobs?
I mean, immediately what comes to my mind is, at first I could see why the officers thought he was drunk, because a lot of the symptoms immediately they correlate. There's a lot of similarities between the two. But as the event, I guess you could say, was going on, I believe that the officers should have conducted a medical check. If they believed he was having a stroke, there should have been EMS called, or just another, like a more thorough evaluation of his symptoms conducted. So that was a little confusing to me, because that's pretty standard procedure when law enforcement encounter something like that.
Especially when, me personally, as I was watching the video, I heard something as though the officer actually said that the man was having a stroke, but then he turned off his body cam. Any thoughts?
Being in the police academy myself, I feel like that right there was kind of weird, because we're kind of taught to never touch our body cam unless we're ordered to by our supervisor. So that's kind of like borderline where I can see where he's done something wrong, and he knows that he's done something wrong, because anytime your hands touch that body cam, you kind of feel like you know what you're doing, even if it's the sound or the video. So I feel like even in his head, he knew something was wrong, and that's like always a thought of his head is like, I need to protect myself, and I feel like everybody should have been kind of watching that. And my biggest thing was when he got his blood checked and when he got his reading, there had to be a certified nurse there to do that reading or an LPN. And I don't know why while she was taking the blood, if she didn't do a blood pressure check or if she didn't do a full mental behavior check. So I feel like there's more behind the scenes that didn't get taken care of.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah. I feel like he was failed completely. I feel like for him to sit in that cell for as long as he did without nobody coming to check on his man, yeah, he was failed completely. 100%. And then I honestly feel like as a community, it makes it so much harder to put trust in our justice system and I know like our community is not perfect. No one's community is perfect. But when it comes to institutions and when it comes to government, I feel like us as Americans should be able to trust those systems. So honestly, that moves us a little bit into like the things that you guys are learning at school and in your police academy. How do you feel as though that criminal justice major is being taught and how it influences other young people who are entering that field, other young police officers and police chiefs and people of that nature? We are the next generation of leaders. We are the future of leaders. So how do you think the education that you're getting from that criminal justice major is affecting people, whether it be yourself or others?
I mean, they teach a lot of stuff. I mean, me personally, I haven't been to a police academy yet, but I'm in the Army National Guard and I'm military police. So they took us through sort of an expedited police academy. So I did get a lot of hands-on learning as far as that. But I look forward to still going to like a full-on police academy in the next couple of years. But the one part when you bring this conversation up, the one part that sticks out to me is when they were teaching us how to cuff people. It was in regards to the George Floyd situation, putting your knee on somebody's back was a valid and taught method of cuffing people. Now, if I remember correctly, nothing above, you can't put your knee on anything above their shoulder blades. It is all like middle, back, and down. That's the only thing you can put your knee on. So that's a situation where there were a lot of things that weren't handled correctly, and because of that, there's been reform across the justice system in order to prevent something like that from happening again.
Yeah. Okay. And I appreciate that from you. My question would be to both of you is, as future leaders, as future, I guess, community leaders, honestly, because a lot of people look up to the police system and the military and the Navy and the Air Force and all of those good things. As our future, how can we combat those issues in our community?
I feel like you have to start teaching statistics, and not just teaching statistics like throwing out, oh, more black people commit crimes than white people. I mean, throwing out statistics of how they were raised, how they were their financial backgrounds, what did they do to get in the situation, the mental health background, the mental health disappearance in the black community. And I think a lot of that ties into like what is not being taught in the schools and what's not being taught in the police academy is that there's reasons behind everything, and that even serial killers have a reason for why they have mentally digressed into this state. So I feel like most times we're not seeing that, we're not looking into like the deeper picture, and I think that's like it's becoming a bigger problem. Just like you said, like how now we're learning things like the shoulder blade things, like that's just new. Like this should have been known. Like obviously everybody knows the human structures, how the lungs work, how breathing works. So to get that example to be like, oh, he can stop breathing from that. I feel like we just need to learn more as a community instead of like learning only from the bad.
Mm-hmm. And kind of building off of that, I mean, the media today likes to throw around like, oh, black people commit more crimes than white people. Well, I mean, there's a reason for that. It's because like crime rate is directly correlated to socioeconomic status. And the reality is that a lot of the poor Americans are black Americans. So I think we need to have some targeted reforms in education and in other institutions in order to bring those people up, in order to lower crime rate across the board.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because when it comes to the crime rate in the media and how they portray everything, that honestly gives us a great segue into redlining. And if our viewers don't know what redlining is, it's when bankers and politicians, as well as people who partake in real estate, band together to draw red lines around Black communities. And now they make those communities higher risk for financial help or financial. So when I say financial help, I mean like loans or credit cards or just anything we can do to help progress ourselves financially. So then, as well as people in the minority communities not receiving economic growth, it also it also decreases the value of their homes in the red lined neighborhoods. And with the lines being decreased in value, or with the homes being decreased in value, their property taxes are also lower. And now everybody hates taxes, and that sounds good. But taxes actually financially support our public institutions such as schools and libraries and these sort of things. So when the city itself and the neighborhoods and the communities are undervalued, that means less tax dollars for schools, for kindergartners, for qualified teachers and supplies, as well as AP classes and opportunities to grow, to mentally grow and to mentally progress these communities.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes hand in hand with gerrymandering as well, for as far as like elections and stuff like that. And I mean, racial gerrymandering is a thing. I mean, that's not something of the past. And that still happens. And you can see it. Like if any state looks at their political districts, you can see, especially around Milwaukee area. I think it's very, very clear which district is which and what area of people reside in which area and stuff like that. So I think that's an issue that unfortunately that the politicians that are making those they're staying in office, which I mean is a problem for the entire political system, not just for gerrymandering. I think term limits need to be a thing across the board, but that's a whole different issue. Um, yeah.
Who makes these rules that keep minorities down?
More often than not, white guys. Usually the people in power of different institutions, more often than not, tend to be white men. They're the ones who are making the rules, whether they mean to or not. They are rules that keep people like you and me down, not giving us the opportunities, not giving us the chances to succeed, compete at the same level of white people.
So definitely those people in those higher up positions that don't really care about what they are doing to others, those are the people that are making this issue bigger than it needs to be, especially today. But yeah, it's just those people that are higher up and they are untouchable of what their decisions are.
Yeah. You guys have anything you have anything? Well, as well as that, it also plays into graduation rates and like what these people go off to become. Like all races, about 85% of all races graduate from high school, but 89% of white people graduate from high school. And then 79% of black people graduate from high school. Now, when it comes to college, 60% of all races graduate, but 64% of white people graduate and 40% of black people graduate from college. Now, even though those percentages are close in numbers when it comes to college, we have to also put into perspective of how many black people actually go to college. And it's not really many. It's very few when it comes to gathering up black communities on the UWO campus. There's usually about 150 people out of 5,000, 6,000 people who attend this school. So 40% of those 150 people is little to none. graduate from college, from their higher education. So my question would be, what can we do to combat this school to prison pipeline? Because most of the prison system is most of the prison system has Black and brown people. About 46% of the prison system is Black and brown people. Now, we were taught around in elementary school. That's almost 50% of all prison systems contain Black and brown people. But our Black and brown people make up 34% of the entire United States. So if 34% of Black and brown people are in this country, but 50% of those people are in jail, how many people are free?
I mean, yeah, I think it goes back to that same point earlier about crime rate being directly correlated with socioeconomic status. Yeah, I mean, there's some obvious need for reform in those communities, especially for education.
Yeah.
I mean, if a lot of people are at it, that come from those communities, they're at an immediate disadvantage throughout high school, and the few that, I mean, it's good to see that the few that do make it to higher education are doing well. But I have a feeling it's not often from those certain communities.
Yeah.
I think it ties back into the system too, because it's like if my grandfather's grandfather was a lawyer, chances are that I'm going to be able to have the institution of education like just put into me. It's just how trauma is inherited. I feel like mentality is also inherited, and the system being like that many Black people don't have that. My grandfather was in college or my great grandfather was in college because in many ways they didn't have the rights or didn't have the chances to be in college. So I feel like that system alone takes away from a big majority of the Black community who can't get those education resources because they don't know how to. And the only thing they really know how to is what they've been taught. And most of the things they've been taught is, I wouldn't say it's the right way to get money, but it's the only way they know how.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's honestly heartbreaking to really think about like the statistics compared with reality. And I think it really opens the door up to talk about like how we were earlier discussing who makes these rules. I think that when it comes to educating about issues of this manner, we also have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is white privilege. Now, white privilege is tossed around all the time in our society. But what does it actually mean? Well, here I have that white privilege refers to whites' historical and contemporary advantages and access to quality education, decent jobs, and livable wages, home ownership, retirement, benefits, and wealth regardless of their socioeconomic status. And like you had mentioned earlier, we all know that Black people do not have a parachute such as privilege that they can fall back on. So moving forward, I think it's our job to band together as a community, one as Black individuals, but two as an entire community, as a country, because as we see what's going on in the news now today with our dictator president, everybody is in the line of fire. So if we're not banding together to create our own future, we might not have one. Any thoughts to close us with, to leave us with?
I won't get political because I am a Republican. But I definitely do see what you're saying, especially with the way that the food share programs is going down. Mm-hmm. The only communities that's affecting, the only people that's going to truly starve is most of the Black community, or because food stamp that's like in our culture almost. And I feel like that right there, and then the slowly taking away benefits, slowly taking away healthcare, that's only going to put the people who are in poverty in a worse place. And people who are in poverty, the only way that they can get money is by taking it from everybody else who are not in poverty. So in a way, you're making everyone the same exact, giving everybody the same exact poverty kind of simple. But
yeah, and I don't want you to feel discouraged about sharing your opinions, because one thing about like our club and this group and this podcast is a safe space to share those opinions, regardless of if we agree with you or if we don't agree with you. It's a way to set a common ground and to teach tolerance through actions speak louder than words. If we can teach people how to agree and disagree in a tolerable, manner, like we're in the same political science class, we discussed tolerance and forbearance. You know, in order for our communities to actually survive together and live in harmony, we need to continuously display those characteristics. And also, like when it comes to, and like now I'm kind of leaning, but it's okay because it's still good to talk about. When it comes to political standing, I used to view myself as a Democrat a little bit, um, a little bit before I took this class, a little bit before this semester and all of those good things. But as I continue my education in this political science, I honestly don't necessarily lean left or right because it's about equality and change, honestly, and whoever can better our society, that's who I want to be a part of. That's the team I want to fight for. And like when it comes to our president now, at first I was like, okay, the opposition, which was what was her name?
Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris, yes. I just felt like, yes, that would be good for our country to have like a black female president, all those things. But it was the way she went about those things and the steps that she took for her race that made me as a black woman say, hey, I can't do this. And for her opposition, our current president now, and also a lot of the things that he does and he says also is very offensive and it's very heart wrenching. When he refers to people and says things like, oh, we need to get the inner city people back in the field. Black and brown people live in the inner city. Black and brown people are urban culture. That's just another reference to say, let's promote slavery again. Those are just, and it's like everything that he's doing is kind of throwing little hints into the direction of which he wants society to move. But it's up to the masses to see that and to band together and change that. And I think that our society gets so caught up in Democrat or Republican that we can't see who the real enemy is, you know? And yeah, do you guys have anything for that?
No, I mean it might seem a little cheap for a white dude to be talking about white privilege,
No, it's not.
but like I was always raised. So my dad grew up in a trailer park. He was piss poor. His family was dealt with mental health issues. And I'm kind of seeing that more nowadays as they've gotten older. And so my dad he's probably my biggest role model because he was able to come up and he's now a high school principal and supports a family of 5 and does all that stuff. So I've always been a firm believer in you can always outwork your circumstances as far as getting out of those communities and stuff like that. But I think it's also important to recognize that when you come from generations of poverty, it it can be hard to it can be harder to outwork those circumstances.
Yeah, 100%.
And I mean, as I said earlier, I'm in the military, so it's probably not hard to guess that I lean a little bit more right. But I definitely think that our political system as a whole is drifting too far apart.
100%.
I would like if looking back on like the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s, um, the Democrats and Republicans I felt had the same goals for America. It was only the means to the goals that they differed in, and now I feel like that's not really the case for our current political climate.
Um, See, I have a weird shape when it comes to that because I think most of what Donald Trump is doing is amazing, but I can see a lot of what he's doing is definitely damaging in the long run.
Yeah.
But when I look at the what was the opponent that he was going?
Um,
When I look at Kamala and I think about Joe Biden, and I think about all the years that they have, I think that anybody, even a stick, would have been better. So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean that's a. I'm not gonna entirely disagree with you there. I'm not a fan of how Trump portrays himself over the media. Um, and but I agree that for the most part, his policies and stuff that for the majority of the stuff that he's pushed through is overall it helps, but I mean nobody's perfect. I mean I can't stand to listen to the guy talk. Like I have to read all of his speeches because I just cannot listen to him live. So he drives me a little nuts sometimes, but um, yeah.
Yeah. To build off of what both of you are saying, one thing that I definitely caught my eye for him was his work for entrepreneurship and business owners, because within the last decade, Black entrepreneurship has shot through the roof, and it is giving our community that chance to break free of um, all of those weights, all of those systematic barriers that keep our community impoverished. So I definitely appreciate the things that he is doing for those business owners. But when it comes to the education deals that he's striking with different colleges, like don't teach about the true history, remove DI workers, or all of those things. The DEI bill, I know it promotes more labeling, but it also promotes equal chance. And if you take a look at the different wage gaps between white and black men, then white men and white women, or black men and white and black women, and then black women and white women, there's the most significant gaps. And we can't do anything positive to progress forward if those opportunities that were opened in the past are being removed and taken away. And like you guys both mentioned, when it comes to right leaning, as we learned in political science class, right leaning just kind of means structural. And I'm all for the structure, quite honestly. I think that systems were created for organization purposes, and it's just about those people who make those systems that we have to be more attentive to. We need to be more attentive to the leaders who we put in place. And we need to be more attentive to the news cycles and what's actually going on in our neighborhoods. And I think what would really help in our society is if us as Black people step out of the comfortability of like the Black world, and white people as white people step out of their comfortability in their white world and go and cross paths to see what's really going on. Because if you go to the schools that I was raised in, you would understand way more than what I can explain to you just by seeing, you know? So I think it's more so about waking up and taking that step into the unknown.
yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, mine as far as my background is like more of like I grew up in a more of the 10%. My dad's a lawyer, my mom's a neurosurgeon. So I've always had to grow up in more of a like kind of like the privilege. But what she said with white privilege is like besides the social economic state, because only reason why I have that privilege is because of my economic state. So I feel like I never had that like, oh, this person's better than me or this person can get, because I always knew that my background is gonna match whatever that person has. So I think growing that's like changed my mindset a lot when I got into African American studies, because then I started to see how like the underlying tone of those without that economic privilege and how they kind of like bend off, and how do they survive without having my grandpa's a lawyer, my great grandpa's a lawyer, my great 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 grandpa's a lawyer, so I know what I'm gonna be. So it's like I now see kind of like the underlying picture, and I think kind of stepping out of my comfort zone and looking into like somebody else's eyes really did help me get that mutual intelligence and emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think it's important for everybody to step out of their comfort zone as far as that regard. I mean, if we don't step out of our comfort zones, they're just gonna hole up and build barriers, not bridges.
100%. That was greatly said. Well, that's all we have for you guys today. I appreciate you guys for being a part of this, and stay tuned for next episode.